everyone. I am getting ready to do a bunch of stamping for my Michigan ornaments, magnets, pins. This is my 2-inch stamp that I use for the mugs and the bigger things. I also have a couple smaller ones. One I think is 1.5 inches and the other one's not quite an inch. But I thought I'd show you how I prepare my clay for the stamping. I start with an extrusion, a coil extrusion that I cut to 10 inches that'll fit on the wires of my frame here. This is my cutting frame. Can you see that okay? So I've got wires here, and so each one of these sections with this size extrusion will give me a thick enough piece to stamp with that 2-inch stamp. So I'm just going to lay these extrusions on the wires, and for this size I'll do about 3 at a time, and then I just carefully smash them through like so. Alright, so there's my pile of pieces ready to stamp. So I'll get my bag here. And start putting these in. I would line them up all neatly if I wasn't going to be getting to these right away, but I should be getting to these as soon as I can. There's that bit, and now I will do the other 3 logs that I got ready. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. And I made this frame with 2x4s and tiger tail jewelry wire and some dowels that I used kind of like a tightening key at the end, and then a bunch of nails. So I have a video that I made right after I made these frames that kind of it shows you how I did them, how to tighten them, all that stuff. But here you can see, here's the nails. So each nail has wire wrapped around it to redirect it to a new groove. Here's the tightening key. I just used pliers to turn it. So turning it that way would loosen it, turning it this way tightens it up. But you have to manually tighten everything with your fingers before you can use the key to take up the slack. Okay. Get these all put in the bag, and then there was a question posted on Clay Buddies today about buttons. How do you make buttons? And I was a little surprised at the work involved in a lot of people's methods. This kind of cements my assertion that I really am a lazy potter. I try and do things with as little work as possible. And I guess buttons are just one of those things that I do with as little work as possible. All right, we're not going to do gigantic buttons, but we are going to do some smaller ones. And I've got This bag here of extrusions. Let's see, these are medium-sized ones. I think I'm going to do some small ones. So these are the ones that I use. This is the size that I use for my smaller stamps. So I'm just going to slice these up with my tiny frame. Of course, it's the same size. It's just the spaces in between are much smaller. So I've got my smaller extrusions and my smaller frame. And these are a little stiff, so I don't know how well these are going to go through, but hoping that they'll still be usable. I had done a whole bunch of extrusions in May, I think it was, getting ready for a June show and a May show. So these have been sitting around since May. It's September now. Welcome to my life. Okay. Yeah, these feel all right. They should stamp just fine, I think. Okay. Get those all pushed through. Okay. So now we've got a whole bunch of little teeny tiny discs. And I'll get a fresh bag to put those in. And of course, I don't have my small stamp out here, but I can grab it. Okay. Here's my stamp rack. A box. Caitlin left it here. And okay, so here is my little Michigan stamp right here. So we're going to stamp a bunch of those, I guess. All right, so I just take one of my discs, I center it on the stamp and give it a little push with my thumb so that it sticks. Tip it over, and then I carefully rock the stamp, watching the edges to make sure that they're not squishing out in any direction more than the other. And then once I get that up, you can see, oh, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? The linen fabric makes an impression there. This arrow indicates the top of my design so that I can mark it with my mark. And okay, that's firm. My stamp came unglued. It sat in a bucket that had too much stuff in it. Oh, heck. All right, so I need to mark the top of this one too, because I just re-glued it. All right. There's about the top of my raven. Okay. So I'll line up my arrows like this, and I'll give it a little bit of a stamp. And so now it's marked. Now I can take it off and put it on my board. I'm just going to use the table today. So I'll do a few of those. If I were using a buff or speckled buff clay, they would also get a letter mark. Because the two of them look identical when they're bisque fired. I can't tell the difference. So if I'm going to have bisque sitting around waiting for me to do something with it, sometimes I have to push in. Sometimes I have to smooth it in a little in order to get it to where I want it. All right, so there's that, and then we'll give that a little push and pop that off too. So I'm not cutting any edges. I don't have any edges that I really need to smooth. I am not rolling in any texture. I'm not having to make a slab. I'm not having to worry about my pieces staying flat from the slab like you would if you were making tiles and or larger pieces. Okay. Did you see how there was that little kind of edge explosion there? All I need to do is just tap that in. Give it a little bit of a squish. And then give it a mark. And pop it down. My plaster sometimes grabs. Sometimes it gets little pits in it. And I can just tap those out. Eventually I'll make a new one with some better plaster, but for now these are working okay for me. A little bit of a rock that way. Okay. Is the camera picking up the budgie noises? I've got Misters Barry and Benny up there chirping away. They seem to be having a good time. Okay. Alright, so we've got 5 of those stamped out, marked on the back, laying out where they're supposed to be. Here. I'm going to get a board to put them on. Okay, we'll lay them out on the actual board that they're gonna dry on. Okay, and now I need my, I bet my cutter's in here. My tiniest brass hole cutter. That one right there. Let's see. Another thing that you can use, I don't like it as much, but a coffee stirrer is about the same size as the brass hole cutter. So, do I have my template? I just made a little hole template out of paper just to figure out what hole spacing looked pleasing to me. So then I'm just gonna lay that here and take my pencil and give it a boop, boop. And that'll give me the general idea of where I want my holes in the design. So we're going middle of the top of the mitten here. Give that a spin. And the tip of the peninsula there. I think that is the Garden Peninsula? Garden Peninsula, I think, down there. Okay, so we're just going to do that with all of these. Middle of the upper lower peninsula, another lower peninsula, and tip of the Garden Peninsula. And do that for all of them. Okay. Now this clay is a little firm, so it is pretty much at leather hard right now, or at least cheese hard. So you can either choose to tap out the little crumblies that form at the top, or you can wait for it to get all the way to bone dry and then just kind of dust them off. You do the same for the back. You can check and make sure that it's all gone through. See how that one's got a little bit of crumblies, but they're pretty loose. So once that's bone dry, you'll just be able to take your finger, make a swipe across that, and they'll crumble right off. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to do a second video on how I glaze them, rather than keeping this one running and you having to watch me stir my glaze. So I will end this one now with our 5 little tiny Michigan magnets, and I will see you in the glazing video. Thanks for watching.